man, am I wolf. Goodness gracious, am I beat to snot. Let me show you little tricks to getting this detent in place. The star goes around. There's your neutral with a little bit of a smaller detent, and then all these other valleys are gear changes. Okay, so the way this works is that round surface rolls up and lives in those grooves, and that's what holds you in a certain gear. It's a bugbear to get these things on and get the spring set without tearing the threads up on this bolt. This bolt has a space on it. See that collar built into the bolt? That's designed for this to live like that. See it? That way when you torque that bolt down into the case, this thing can still swivel. So what I do is I start at a few threads, just enough threads to where everything is solid, not going to rip out and damage a thread. And then I get the spring, and I don't quite put it home yet. See how this pushes up here on that notch when it's on that side of that nub, and that gives it a spring effect. See that? See it springing? Boing, 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 boing. Okay, I'm going to pull this spring up off the nub and then put this in place. Alright, it's good to Loctite these. You want to Loctite these, guys, when you do these. But see that female we talked about earlier? There's that notch on the shift drum. Make sure they mate up. If they don't mate up and that doesn't sit down in there nice and flat, it's not going to work right. Alright, now look, something else I want to teach you while I got you. Don't just put your socket on there and crank the living snot out of this right now. Because the only thing that's holding that drum in that position are those shift forks with those little nubbies I showed you and those troughs. You don't want to be forcing those. You don't want to be forcing those at all. You want to be gentle with them. Okay, let me show you how you got to do this. You rotate this clockwise while you're turning the transmission shafts, and you let this shift all the way until it's in the last gear and there's nowhere left for it to go. Watch. See that solid thunk to the clockwise direction? Now I can torque this. You do not want to torque that when it's in the middle of a gear pressing on a shift fork. Okay, that's torqued to the very specific Guten tight. Alright, now get your little wheel up in there, get your spring in place, and this is sometimes hard to do, especially with one hand, but you got to get that part of the spring wrapped around the detent like that, and then get this part of the spring up behind the nub, and then start torquing that bolt down. I have to put the camera down to do this, but when I come back, you'll see that part of the spring behind that nub and this torqued all the way down, and it'll have a spring action. That little spring down in there, but this bolt's not all the way down. This pawl is cockamamie up in there. See that? So we're going to work this bolt down, and we're going to keep turning it and working it and turning it and working it until this gets home based. Okay, that's it. That's gonna hold that in gear. Yeah, don't over torque these bolts down in here, guys. This is just cheap cast aluminum. Yes, these cases cost a lot of money, but that's because of the amount of machine work that goes into them. It's not because it's quality metal. It's junk metal. So be very careful. Don't be over torquing this stuff. If you're worried about something coming loose, Loctite it. But do not over torque down in here. Alright, so there's your ratchet. There's your pawl. I'm going to rotate through. And, well, actually, I'll just go ahead and build the shift shaft and all that stuff and get that put in. It's a very tedious process, guys, getting these little parts all together in there. And it's very model specific. I don't know that you'll benefit practically from me taking a half an hour to explain all the nuances of this. It's a very complex system that Suzuki uses that feels very good when you ride. It's got a nice smooth shift. But I prefer the simplicity and the reliability of the way Honda and Kawasaki do their transmissions. But that's okay. Yeah, I found where the spacer goes. It goes right there. And then that makes a level surface for that. So that's where that spacer went. I knew it went somewhere. I forgot where. But I'm just going to go ahead and build all this, guys, and come back and show you, a snapshot of it being fully built. I think it's kind of redundant and unnecessary to waste 30 minutes going through the details of that. If you either want to see it, we installed the shift drum and the ratchet and torqued the ratchet down and wobbled that into place with the spring in the right spot. So now the drum can stay in place in each successive gear. Now to change the gears, there's this pretty complicated ratchet setup in here. And it's got a plate that goes over that spacer. I torqued those down. Show you a trick on how to do that. That's a good way to grab a screw and get it nice and tight without necessarily using an impact driver. Alright, so now you got this complicated ratchet and pawl mechanism. This is the part on the other end that the gear shift lever goes on. Show you this. That's where your gear shift lever goes. There's a little steel washer there that keeps the case from getting galled up by the circlip. So make sure that little washer's in place. And then I like to spit on the end of this and lube it. And rub spit all around on it, make it wet because it's got to go through that seal. Okay. Do your little washer doohickey. Get that down like that. Now that spring lives over that post and at the same time goes in down here. But you don't want to just force it straight down because remember, you're going through a seal. You want to be gentle and rotate it as you go. Okay, see how I wiggled it back and forth, try to give it what rotation I could while I found home with that spring. So if you look on the other side now, there's room to put the gear shift lever on. So now we're ready to hook up the idler gear. But first I want to investigate this kickstart situation. So let me look into that and see what's going on with all that stuff. Got the Kickstarter parts all back in there. See how that spring winds around? The spring has to pull clockwise. So when you kickstart the bike counterclockwise and let go, it springs it back. See that? There's the idler gear, so that's all good to go. We're ready to start messing with the governor, I guess. Okay guys, I got the governor bolted down. Let me show you these little clips for these rods. Everybody breaks these. I don't know why. They're not complicated. Okay? They're really not. This nubule, how you like that word, nubule, goes in that hole and clicks in first without the rod. Just like that. Then you insert the rod into the hole like that, and that, you know, goes up and down. But you gotta kind of do it in here like this. It's easier to just do it than tell you. See, that's it. It's that simple. It's that simple. It's not hard, guys. I mean, that holds it in place. You really got to pull hard on it to get it to come out of there. And that's how it's designed to go. That holds that rod in place. And unless you force it or pull it out of there, it's going to stay. And then this one on the other end, when you get up top, on the lever up top, will go like that. It'll go like that, and then you rotate it around and you clip it into place. Like that. It's very simple, guys. When you want to take it off, you rotate it, pull the rod out first, then you can get pliers behind it and undo that out of here. But that's usually not necessary, because by that time most people have already broken them. Alright, that's how you put those clips in. Oh, that hurts so bad. Don't race without chest protectors, guys. Don't do it.